bring my own talks, so someone else will have to do it then.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, folks, I think it's time to start. We're just past the 9:30 where you are. So welcome all to the ACME session at IETF 120. Here's the note well. It discusses things about IPR, about anti-harassment, about the code of conduct. We've been encouraged not to try to paraphrase this to the people in the room. So especially not to say, oh, this is just about being nice to each other. It says a lot more than that. So please read the note well and note it well. This is an extension that talks about, repeats the stuff about the code of conduct and anti-harassment and what you should do if you are a witness or a victim of harassment. Some meeting tips for people who are in there. Make sure that you do sign in via the data tracker or the QR code or the Meet Echo Lite client, and keep your audio and video off if you're not using the on-site version. For remote participants, please use a headset like I'm using, and make sure that your audio and video are off unless you are sharing or presenting. And I'm going to be with my video off for most of the time. Okay. These are the general resources for the IETF 120. This is the general agenda, Meet Echo, other information, and where to go if you have technical difficulties, which hopefully we're past that since it's already Friday. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. Now, we do need a second note taker. Aaron has volunteered to take notes. However, he has two presentations, so it will be difficult for him to take notes during those presentations. So we do need another volunteer. Anyone, please?
Thank you, John.
Yeah, it's John Gray. I'll help.
John Gray will help. Okay, thank you, John Gray. Okay, so let's proceed with our own agenda. So technical difficulties, agenda bashing should take 5 minutes. We're 4 minutes in. Then we'll have a document status that I hope will not take 10 minutes. Then we have 3 presentations, one from Brian Cipros about the DTN node ID, and then 2 from Aaron about ARI and ACME profile, which is different. I think we're going to have some agenda bashing. Yes.
Yes, I tried to request some. Q myself MPIN. I tried to request some time to discuss Acme onions. Either my email got lost, or I thought I sent the email and hadn't actually sent the email. The second is more likely. So 5 minutes, please, to discuss that and future steps on that draft.
Right. So as you see from the agenda, we have 2 hours, and the agenda is enough for about 1 hour. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time. Okay, Mike.
Hello, is my audio working?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so agenda bash for any other business. We've been having a good discussion on List about attestation and how you carry attestation over ACME. And Brendan Weeks has this draft that says how you do it for WebAuthn, but there are, of course, other attestation technologies in existence. So I'd like if we get any other business at the end to just sort of continue that discussion verbally.
That's fine. Okay. Right. So, and Brandon says in the chat room that he is here. I'm not sure if here is in the room or just in the chat room, but it's fine either way. Okay, so with that, we can continue to document status. So there have not been any new RFCs since September. ARI, we have a new version from the end of May 31st, and we have a presentation, so I'm not going to steal Aaron's thunder. DTN node ID, we have a presentation about that. So also, well, it's not really correct to say that there's been no new version since IETF 119, because the newest version is from the Monday after IETF 119. And for a long time, we've been stuck waiting for DTN BPv7 admin IANA to progress, and we may have some good news about that. As for ACME Onion, ACME Device Attestation, and ACME Scope DNS challenges, all 3 have the latest drafts are from February, so not much progress since IETF 119. Okay, and finally, ACME integration has been stuck in the RFC editor's queue for 377 days. It's been waiting for Anima Bruschi Cloud, which is in the state revised ID needed for 6 months. And then it's also waiting for LAMP's RFC 7030, which is just finished, well, not finished, but has been in a working group last call and also needs a revised ID, and it has been in this state for 16 days. We have a few common authors between all 3 drafts, MCR and Owen Friel. Anybody want to come to the mic and tell us what's going on with all that? Guess not. Okay, so we'll contact them offline. ACME client hasn't been updated in a year, so I think we can assume it's dead. Anyone want to challenge that? Tough room. Okay. So on to presentations without slides, because Brian hasn't sent us slides. So if you're wondering what this graphic is, I fed the headline of the title of the draft to AI image generator, and that's what came out. Brian.
Thank you. It looks very accurate. So on the topic of the node ID validation, the very last edit was to correct a simple typo, a bad cross-reference section number into the ACME document, but no other change at all. there is a dependence on another document that's finally made its way to AD and eventually IESG review in the DTN working group to allocate the registry space where this is going to be registering a code point. And so this document had been in, I believe, AD hold pending on that other document's progression. So I think that those can now progress. One general comment that's editorial about this DTN node ID validation draft is that the term DTN that's used in the title and in a couple of sections and descriptions of things is a little bit more general purpose than what actually is present, in the sense that this is not a catch-all validation method. This is using bundle protocol version 7. And so there might be some good wordsmithing to happen to clarify and replace the term DTN here with something either BPv7 or something a little more specific so that it's not misunderstood what's happening here. The descriptive text is all fine. The mechanism is fine. There's no technical issue with this. It's just a terminology thing. And the reason why it was mentioned only is that the DTN working group itself is looking at expanding its charter and dealing with things that are not just bundle protocol, and we just want to try and be less confusing to somebody who would be reading this for the first time. But that is something also that could happen concurrent with or after IESG review, I think. That's a question for chairs.
So you think it's ready for working group last call in conjunction now with the DTN draft?
I think so, yeah.
Sure, I think we can do that, well, after the meeting. After IETF, not in an hour. Sure, and anyone want to rush to the mic and say something else? Something different?
And there may well be other IESG feedback, just generally from first-time readers in the same kind of vein as that.
Of course, to pass working group last call, we'll need to actually get working group last call comments. And we're not getting much participation in the room, and hopefully we'll get more on the mailing list. Okay.
Thanks.
Anything else? Any comments about this draft or? On the parts. Okay, so I guess thank you, Brian. And now we'll go to people who have Aaron. Let's talk about ARI.
All right. Hi, everybody. Go ahead to the next slide. Since IETF 119, technically draft 04 was published after IETF 119, but it doesn't include, like, no substantive work has happened since IETF 119. I just missed the document publication deadline before IETF 119, so it was published a little bit afterwards. There have not been any substantive changes since draft 04 was published, and I'm not currently like prepping things for a draft 05 or anything like that. Basically, what that means, as far as I'm concerned, is this is pretty stable. It is fully implemented as it currently stands by 10 independent client implementations and at least 3 server implementations. And based on various things that have happened in the web PKI space, at least 2 other certificate authorities have both pledged to implement RE Draft 04 as remediation items for various incidents that they've been tracking in the Mozilla Bugzilla CA incident tracker. So we have implementation and adoption by quite a wide variety of clients and servers of the current version of the draft. I'm not in these numbers counting anyone that's implemented earlier versions of this draft. So yeah, next slide. There are 2, maybe 3 open questions. Okay, so the top open question here is, for the last few weeks, there's been one bug open on the issue tracker. That the discussion on that bug does not have a clear and obvious conclusion, but it's also a very minor thing. This is very simply, according to the current draft, if a server decides to reject a new order request because that new order request says that it replaces a certificate which has already been replaced, it can return whatever error it likes for that. You know, for example, ACME malformed. And so there's an open question, should it return a more specific error for this more specific case of your request is malformed in this very specific way? Following along from the rest of the ACME documents, the answer would be kind of no. The errors that we have are not super specific. The vast majority of new order requests get rejected with reason malformed. That's kind of what you do for bad new order requests. But there's a question here of like, should there be a new ACME error type? Should this draft specify that you have to return HTTP 409 conflict? Because that's kind of the semantics of what's going on here. I think this is not necessary, but it's an option. And so if people have strong opinions on that, I would be willing to incorporate that. It would be like a 1-sentence change to the doc. Q, I'll get to you in just a moment. Thank you. Second thing, literally like 2 hours ago, someone filed another issue in the bug tracker. I have not had a chance to like fully digest what that issue is asking about. I will continue discussion on that bug. 3, this has been stable for a while. We have adoption in a bunch of clients and a bunch of servers. I think it is likely ready for working group last call, and I would like the opinion of the rest of the room. Those are the 3 open questions. Q.
Q myself, MPI-Inf. On the topic of the error, I think that's kind of a sensible addition. None of the errors currently in ACME really makes sense for this. This is a new kind of error. I don't think HTTP 409 is necessarily the best thing, and the ACME clients already understand like the error is returned by the HTTP status, and then there is a more specific error inside. So if we add a new error, clients that don't know this will still go, oh, HTTP 400, bad thing happened. But the clients that are smarter can be more informed about what the hell went wrong. And ACME already requires that clients handle unknown errors. So I don't think there's a reason not to add an error. And it's always nice to have a bit more specificity when possible.
Yeah, fair. I think there's a slight bit of complication there in that if I recall correctly, 8555 doesn't actually have like a registry of ACME errors. It just has a table of them. So it's slightly unclear to me how to augment that.
I think that is an IANA registry.
It is an IANA registry. So thank you. My memory is incorrect. Then it'll be totally trivial to add that.
And that's the last slide from this deck.
That is correct.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'm suggesting is that we start a working group last call. We'll try not to do it together with DTN Node AD because otherwise people get confused. We can call out the 2 open questions in the working group last call. I mean, not just this starts 2 weeks of working group last call, but this started 2 weeks, and there are these 2 open questions, and hopefully that will get people to participate more. Okay, so we can move on to the next deck. Which is also yours. We can see by the color scheme. Okay, ACME profiles, and well, this has a name of a draft. This is not a real draft. I mean, it's not submitted yet.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is just, I wanted to use this opportunity to pitch an idea that has been bouncing around both my brain and the working group as a whole for a little while now. I do intend to put together a draft for this for reasons that will become clear in a couple slides. But yeah, this is sort of a like advance heads up. I intend to write this document. I will be seeking feedback. Basically, the problem that I want to solve here is that the new order request as it exists has a couple knobs that clients can tweak, but they're very limited. You can request a not before and a not after, but several ACME servers, Let's Encrypt included, ignore those fields. And of course, you can request the set of identifiers that you want. That's about it as far as the new order requests goes. So if you want to customize some feature of your request, for example, whether or not to include the OCSP must staple extension, that all has to come in the CSR. But including customization like that in the CSR is really unwieldy and unfortunate for a large number of reasons. This comes really late in the process. This happens at finalized time, so you can't change anything about how validation occurs based on anything that's going to be changed via the CSR. CSRs are like untrusted. I don't actually want to be parsing CSRs, and I definitely don't want to be copying data directly out of CSRs. There's obviously ways to get around that, but I'd still prefer to touch the CSR as little as possible. They suck because X509. It's also too fine-grained. You can tweak a bunch of different knobs in a CSR. What extensions do I want? What extended key usages do I want? What normal key usages do I want? All sorts of different things. And it's then up to the CA to determine whether they want to issue a certificate containing the particular combination of attributes that you've requested in the CSR. And that's a combinatorial problem that you just shouldn't have to solve. And finally, CSRs are actually a pain for clients to manipulate for a lot of the same reasons. People regularly produce CSRs that are broken and violate the X509 spec in a large number of ways, and anyone who wants to be at least a little bit liberal in what they accept has to deal with that. So a new order doesn't work for us right now to tweak requests, and the CSR kind of sort of works but is bad. Next slide. So the proposal here is reifying the idea of profiles. If you've spent any time with CA operators, you're very familiar with the concept of profiles. Basically, every CA has something that they call a profile, which determines like what set of attributes and extensions go into the certificates that they issue. Many CAs have many profiles because they tweak aspects of their certificates for different enterprise customers and stuff like that. The idea here is letting an ACME server advertise a small set of hand-curated profiles that the CA has said, I will support these 3 profiles, please just pick one. This is closely equivalent to what happens today in that every ACME server today basically says, I issue 1 profile, and the client picks which CA they want to go to based on what sorts of attributes they want out of their cert. And this is just saying, one ACME server can now advertise multiple profiles that are still hand curated in the same way as their single profile is today. The pros of this are that it's very simple for clients to implement, and it's very simple for site operators to configure. For a client, this is like 1 extra field in a new order request, and it's like 1 extra config field. For a site operator, it's filling in one extra line in a config file or selecting one thing from a dropdown in a web interface. The con, and this has come up a little bit in previous mailing list discussion, is that there's no like dynamic profile negotiation here. This is not detailed lists of every single aspect of the profile so that a client can build a acceptance matrix of all of the different profiles they see and figure out which one matches their operator's preferences. No. This is just, there's some profile names, they have some human readable descriptions, the site operator selects one for their client to request. That's it, very simple. Next slide. Next slide, please. There we go. So the concrete proposal here is that the directory meta just grows one new field called profiles. The contents of this field are a bunch of key value pairs where the keys are profile names and the values are human readable descriptions of those profiles. These could just be sentences of text. They could be URLs pointing at documentation pages. Right now, that's sort of up to the CA operator. Next slide. And then you augment the order object. So the order object grows a field called profile. When you place a new order, the order object that you post to the new order endpoint can have this profile field in it. If you select one or if you don't and the ACME server selects a default profile for you, that profile can then be reflected back in the order object when you post as get it to see the status of your order. And then at issuance time, that profile, or at finalized time, that profile will be used to customize the contents of the certificate. Next slide. So I said earlier that the reasons why I intend to make this a draft would become clear. That's here. Let's Encrypt already implements this. We've been working on this for the last several months. We have full support for this. We are not currently advertising any extra profiles in our directory meta object, but we can as soon as we configure them, and the full issuance pipeline works. And yeah, we have integration tests doing this whole thing. Our profiles are currently capable of controlling the validity period, the common name, the subject key ID, the TLS client auth, and the key encipherment key usage. These are the things that we care about changing from our current issuance to future issuance. But this is 100% implementation details for us, right? The thing that we will simply advertise is, here's a new profile. If you select it, it will change this set of things. So for us, the next steps are standardization, doing a draft here. Client implementations. I have one client implementation that works already. It was a like 10-line change to a existing Go ACME client. It's very simple to implement, but obviously we need to actually upstream that, and we need more client implementations. And 3, we want profiles to be able to control things at validation time, such as like the lifetime of the authorization objects that the ACME server creates for you, and the lifetime of the order object that the ACME server creates for you. And we haven't implemented those aspects of it yet. But again, that's entirely implementation details in the back. So yeah, this is sort of a heads up status. Profiles are a thing. Let's Encrypt already implements them. We think it's a pretty good idea, and I hope to have a draft for this in the working group sometime in the next month or so. I think that's it.
Okay, so I see that Mike is in the line. So.
I can yield to the comment in chat, though, if you want to address Anna's comment first.
I haven't read it yet. Sorry, give me a sec.
I can read it out loud. I'm a little new to this field, so sorry if this question is obvious. Is this about the allowance of profiles in general, and implementers make their own and advertise them, or the defining of a new standardized profile?
This is the former, definitely the first of those. Each ACME server would come up with their own set of profiles. Each of their profiles would control whatever aspects of the certificate they want it to control. They would document and advertise those profiles themselves. So like Let's Encrypt would intend to have a profile reflecting what our certificate issuance looks like today, where we do include client auth and our certs are valid for 90 days. A more modern profile where we don't include client auth, we don't include the subject key ID, and those certs are still valid for 90 days. And eventually a short-lived profile where the certs are only valid for like 6 or 7 days, as is being encouraged by the web PKI baseline requirements. So like some other like internal private PKI ACME CA might have a totally separate set of things that they care about letting clients pick between, and Google Trust Services or Sec2Go or someone else might have a totally separate set of things that they want people to select. There might be a DV versus OV versus EV profiles and things like that.
Mhm.
Okay, Mike Elmsworth, Entrust. My question is, if you've already implemented this, how open are you to accepting working group changes?
Very. Like, we want this to be
Good answer.
a thing that works for everyone. I certainly come to this with some very strong opinions about what I think is the right solution here, because I'm a person with strong opinions. But like, we've been through the process of deploying ACME v1 and then changing our entire implementation to be what we called ACME v2 when the original RFC 8555 ended up being standardized. Same thing here.
Okay, then I will try and run this through the Entrust dev team and get some feedback for you.
Okay, so hopefully by next meeting we'll have a real draft.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
otherwise we can't really handle it. Okay, any more comments, questions? Okay, so that gets us to the oh, John.
Sorry, yeah, I just have one because before you mentioned about CSR not being trusted, which I do agree as a data format. I guess it's signed and all that, but I think isn't the pipe coming into it trusted? So if you consider that, it would be trusted.
So I mean, the big issue here is that there is a long and storied history that continues to like literally 3 months ago of publicly trusted CAs taking fields from CSRs and copying them directly into the final certificate. Because they allow some sort of configuration and customization via CSR, and the easiest way for them to do that is to say, oh, you requested this specific thing? Great, let me just copy it over. This has been the source of ongoing CA incidents for the last decade or more. And I think anything that allows us to say, no, you shouldn't have to do that is valuable.
So even if you trust the transport, you still think the CSR can have, yeah, I guess.
Right.
I still have bad things in there that are going to cause issues. Okay, thanks.
Right. My problem is that I don't trust the code that generates CSRs because it is frequently broken and terrible.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I thought we all use OpenSSL and everything works. So yeah, I know I trigger a lot of people with OpenSSL. With no hats, is there an expectation that when you renew a certificate, you use the same profile that you did for the original certificate?
No. I mean, I think every CA could make their own judgments on that. From the perspective of ACME in general, ACME doesn't have the concept of renewal at the protocol level. And so you can just file a new order request that has a different profile than your most recently passed new order request. And sure, the server can treat that however it wants to. Yeah.
I mean, it's a good thing because there you have the operational problem of that you have, once you issue the certificate with the profile, you have to maintain it forever if you did so. And what happens if you change the meaning of the profile? Oh, yeah, there's endless complexities. Okay, so unless anyone else is joining the queue, I guess thank you, and we're looking forward to see the draft.
Sweet. Thanks.
Okay, so although the next slide says any other business, let's take them in the order that we've already discussed. So Q. I don't have a special AI generated slide for you because
That's
I
fine.
didn't get your mail.
Yeah, I mean, I don't need slides. I just have some few words to say. So the ACME Onion draft, as far as I'm concerned, it is done. We had the last call in November, to which there was precisely 0 response, which is not great. I have had too many other things going on in my life to deal with this until now. So apologies for leaving this alone, but I'm now getting back to it. So I want to move this forward. I'm hesitant to say no one said anything bad in the last call by no one saying anything at all. So therefore, it's good. But what are the next steps here? Does anyone have any objections to this, or do we lob it over the wall to the IESG? Yeah.
Well, before we lob it over the wall to the ISG, we have to be able to say with a straight face that this represents working group consensus. Yes. And deafening silence is not usually a good indication.
Yes, that is what I'm trying to say here. That we need some consensus that the working group supports this document and would like it to be published.
So, Tim.
Yeah, part of your problem is your target audience is extremely small.
Yes, I recognize this is like applicable to 20 people on Earth.
I think you might be overestimating by about a factor of 2. I happen to be one of those people, so I thought I should at least come up here. There were a lot of things going on in my life as well, and so I haven't had as much of a chance to look at it as I would like, but I will promise to give you a review. I think you deserve one.
Okay.
So let me take a look at it and get back to you.
Good. Could we do a show of hands here of support, or are people like, I have no idea what this draft is about. I do not feel confident making my voice known either way.
We could do the show of hands thing. Let me. Yeah, there it is. Let me type it now. Are we asking about if people read the draft or do they understand?
I guess, well, the show of hands is yes, no, no opinion. So yes is I support throwing this over the wall to the ISG. No is I have problems with this draft. And no opinion is I do not have the necessary expertise to answer the question.
Figure out this tool. Oh, there. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we've got a few yes and a lot of no opinion.
Okay. Well, no one said no, so that's good. And I kind of expected a lot of no opinion.
So if we could have a thread on the mailing list, and in that thread have the 6 people who said yes say, yeah, we've read the draft and we think it's ready, that would be pretty good.
And I think, yes, if the 6 people respond on the mailing list and say good, then we can lob it over to the ISG, in which case we need a document shepherd. Is anyone willing to volunteer?
Well, traditionally, the chairs do the
oh, okay, right, sorry. I missed, maybe.
But not necessarily. Yes,
right.
Yeah.
Well, yes, the chairs are welcome to volunteer as well.
Well, I think my co-chair hasn't had enough of an opportunity to shepherd documents, and probably be very happy. Of course, I can't see his face, so I don't know how he's taking that.
Okay, wonderful. Then we'll confirm on the mailing list. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you. And next is either Mike or Brandon Wicks about attestation.
All right. Since I don't have slides, I just posted a big blurb on the text chat. Maybe I'll give people a second to read if they want to. I can start summarizing. So the summary here, as I understand it, I'm trying to summarize a few different people's points. So Brendan, Thomas, who I don't think is here, Carl, who may or may not be here. But the draft ACME device attest does an excellent job at what it does. It's targeting WebAuthn. I believe it's serving iOS and Android devices. It's great, does what it says it does. It's perfect. Let's not change it. However, WebAuthn is not the only attestation standard. The RATS working group has been furiously putting out stuff, and lots of companies are furiously making devices that can attest themselves. And so this is coming. And so we should have a discussion about how to carry other types of attestation over ACME that aren't WebAuthn. In particular, WebAuthn is not an IETF standard. We have an equivalent, which is called conceptual message wrapper. And so this is both WebAuthn and CMW, for those who aren't in the attestation world. They are both wrapper formats. Attestation at the moment tends to be proprietary. The device manufacturer has some binary signed blob, and those are not typically well standardized, so you need some sort of wrapper format. CMW is IETF's wrapper format for that. So obviously we need to figure out how to carry it over ACME. The question then is how. And so I think there's no debate that we need to carry CMW over ACME. That I think is an uncontentious point. The debate is how. And so one is, and Carl's approach here, and he's going to call me honest in chat, is we figured out how to wrap CMW inside WebAuthn, and then we use the existing draft. The other proposal is we have a second new draft that proposes a new top-level attestation container for carrying CMW directly. And then there's sort of a third debate, which is there are, of course, other formats in the world, and do we provide a more general bucket like we've done in LAMPS, or do we just say, no, figure out how to put yourself in CMW? So that's I think hopefully that's a reasonable summary of the discussion. So Carl, Brandon, Thomas, if you're here, where do we take this?
Well, Brandon is active in the chat, but is not really speaking up. Ah, there it is.
My internet dropped right as the end of the Mike was talking. Yeah, I think you've mostly correctly interpreted what this was aimed at. It's sort of client devices, most likely in an enterprise environment, which is kind of where that identity aspect is coming from. This is already kind of implemented on like some more like laptop workstation form factors. Internally, we have some support / plans for Linux. Mac OS supports this, but these are the world I'm coming from is kind of client devices that are using certificates for MTLS for authentication and are uniquely identifiable. And being able to issue the certificates to a uniquely identified device that is already kind of pre-trusted is kind of the underpinning of my draft.
No objections whatsoever to your draft. Your draft is beautiful. The question is whether your draft is broad enough.
We talked about this a bit last time. As you said, right now, all the attestation statement formats are proprietary. So there's one for Chrome OS, one for Android, one for iOS, and all my draft really tries to do is just like encapsulate these in a key value pair, which doesn't help simplify the implementation of the actual ACME server, which will have to implement a per vendor verifier, which is obviously not great. And my hope is that the work coming out of the RATS working group will push vendors to common standards. So one verifier will be able to verify attestations from multiple different vendor devices. And I believe that's kind of what Rats is moving towards.
So I'm actually an author of one of the drafts you're referring to. There's EAT, which I'm not an author on, Entity Attestation Token, which is a CBOR claim set. And then I'm an author on the PKIX port of that, which is an ASN1 port of that, which is, here's a ASN1 claim set. Well, basically, we're trying to overlap the claims. We're also adding all the P11 claims. So I'm working on that on behalf of the HSM vendors who want to be able to say the device booted in FIPS mode and the key, this particular key is not exportable, and all the P11 things you want to say about it. And yeah, we're trying to standardize a format for that, so it's not proprietary. The question, the debate here is web. Really, I think the core of the debate is WebAuthn the right top level wrapper? Do we want to put CMW? Do we want to define how to wrap CMW inside WebAuthn, or is that a horrible SDO Frankenbeast? And since WebAuthn and CMW are both solving the same problem, we should treat them at the same level.
To me, I think it would just be easier to have a second draft that defines CMW as the top level. Like, I think that is the cleaner long-term outcome. But until we get to a world where vendors are actually implementing EAT, I think we're going to kind of be stuck with the implementation complexity for verifiers. But I can speak a little bit for Android because that's the org I'm in at Google. We have our own proprietary attestation statement format. We also have early code or code that implements an early version of EAT sitting in a code repo and it hasn't shipped. So I think once that draft ships, we'll be moving to that. So we have at least one vendor sort of on board.
I also don't even object to WebAuthn staying in ACME. Like, WebAuthn is a great protocol. There's lots of these YubiKey type things that do WebAuthn. Maybe those things want certs. Seems reasonable.
It sounds like we're sort of in agreement. Is there any objection to having two parallel drafts, one for CMW, one for WebAuthn?
I think Carl is the objector. Carl, who's not in voice. But
Aaron is also in the queue. The question is if there's a willingness in the group to accept these two drafts. Yes, Aaron.
I was going to agree with Mike and Brandon. I was going to say it is my opinion that identifier types and challenge types are cheap, and it is generally better to have more of them that can be more specific and do the thing that they are designed to do, rather than having larger umbrella things with a lot of internal logic and switches within them. Even from like a compliance perspective, right, I would prefer to know that something was verified using device attest 01 or WebAuthn attest 01 versus CMW attest 01, or whatever the names end up being. I'm not expressing any opinions here. I would prefer to know that something was validated using a specific challenge method meant to validate that thing, rather than, oh yeah, it was validated by attest 01. I don't know what code ran behind attest 01. I've got 10 different code paths back there. It was one of them. Like, I would much prefer more specific challenges. Challenge types are free. Identifier types are free. I think the second draft is appropriate.
Okay, this sounds like an interesting discussion to continue on the list. Yeah, if we need to have two documents instead of one, that's also a good thing.
We probably need a hero to start that draft. Thomas volunteered to help. I'm happy to help. We discussed what we should name it. Should we name it? I think I like the suggestion to name it Device Attest 02 is the CMW version. But yeah, someone needs to start that draft so we have something to read and dash at.
Yeah, we really don't like drafts that have 02 in the name.
No, sorry, the ACME challenge type. So I started the thread yesterday by saying, Brandon, can you change your draft from device attest to WebAuthn attest? And Brandon said, well, but it's already implemented. How about you do device attest 02 for the next format, which I think is reasonable, but maybe isn't fully universally acknowledged as good. Anyway, we should write it down, and then we have something to bash at.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So is there any other business? Or are we done here? No, nobody looks like they're coming to the mic, so I guess we are done here. Oh, wait, mic is
sorry,
mic is
I'm back. There's the ACME ACME automation, ACME auto discovery pair of drafts that my colleague Paul van Brouwershaven and I have talked about a few times. We did not submit an update this round. We did not request a speaking slot. The drafts aren't dead. We're just
just resting.
Been a little busy. We haven't done updates, but they're still alive. Don't forget about them.
Okay. Oh, two more. Yeah. So I guess Aaron.
Real quick, I wasn't going to say anything about this, but then it came up on the RATS discussion thread like 48 hours ago, so I figured I'd say something here. I have a further future hope to also create a draft for a pub key identifier type, so that in the new order request, the client could submit the public key that they want their certificate to be issued over at new order time, instead of only submitting that pub key in the CSR at finalized time. This has two advantages. One, it means you don't have to parse the pub key out of the CSR. And two, it means that there's an opportunity during validation for the client to prove control over the pub key, for example, by doing a TLS handshake using the private key corresponding to that pub key. A CSR does not prove possession of a private key. You might have just downloaded that CSR from someone else's GitHub repo. And so having a pub key identifier type and having challenges that can actually prove control over a pub key would be nice for several reasons. But that's a further future thing that I wasn't planning to talk about, but then it came up on the mailing list.
So bit by bit, we're trying to get rid of the CSR, but of everything in other fields. Okay. So long-term plan. Yes.
Okay. Hey, I'm Dave Robin. The thing you said about error messages, combined with this last discussion about the verifier, the RATs or the WebAuthn, just has been stewing in my head over here. And I'm thinking that I love good error messages. So I'm all in favor of specific, why did you reject me? I really don't like the use of the word malformed when it is perfectly well formed. You just didn't like one of my fields, value. So I mean, anyway, it's different. So I like good error messages. The reason I came to the mic though was talk about these two additions: the WebAuthn, the next one, and possibly a RATS, or who knows to go on. I would prefer to see, it was mentioned, a wrapper of that says this is my attestation thing. Here's my method, and here's my data. And the reason for creating a specific wrapper for it is so rather than have each of these proposals come in and say, here's a top level thing, and here's another top level thing, and here's another top level thing. And if you don't understand it, they're all optional, don't worry. If you do understand it, great. I would prefer it to be more formalized. It says, this is my attestation, this is my algorithm name or content name, document, whatever you want to call it. And here it is, because then when I find one I don't recognize, I get an attestation, I say, I don't know what a XYZ is. I can give you a very specific error message that says, I didn't like your attestation, I don't understand it. If you just include a top level field called XYZ that includes this new kind of attestation that I don't know whether I'm supposed to reject that or not. Or so, see, I don't hope that makes sense. And I don't, what I heard was, oh, I'll just make a proposal and then I'll make another proposal and then a third one will come in, and they're not grouped together under a node in the structure. And I think if they're all related, they should be. mainly for the purpose of giving back a good error message. I hope that made sense.
QMySL MPIN question for Aaron. Is this public key proposal eventually supposed to completely remove the CSR from ACME? Because that is something I would love to see.
I am not brave enough to propose that yet. The truth is that I've been bouncing around ideas for a full-blown ACME BIS that would do a bunch of things, including getting rid of the CSR at finalized time. And I have been slowly talking myself out of the need for a full ACME BIS. There are still a bunch of things I would like to do, but there's a bunch of good I can accomplish without having to go that far, including by doing things like public key at new order time. And so I don't think there's any way to fully get rid of the CSR at finalized time until ACME BIS. A compliant ACME server would still have to accept a CSR even if it just completely ignores it and drops the bytes on the floor. But yes, it is absolutely my plan for Let's Encrypt's ACME server to drop the bytes of the CSR on the floor if we get a public key at new order time.
I will accept dropping the CSRs on the floor as an acceptable getting rid of the CSR.
There are reasonable questions about, like, hey, what about clients that it's an ACME client representing a hardware device, and the hardware device's API only has a mechanism to output a CSR. Do you want that ACME client to have to parse the CSR, extract the pub key, include the pub key in the new order request? I think the answer is no. Like, I kind of want to be willing to just accept a CSR to facilitate that case. I'd rather have my server parse the CSR than some ACME client, but definitely room for discussion there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if we do want to get rid of the CSR, it's going to require a BIS document for 8505. Yes, Mike.
Aaron, just this last point was exactly what I got in the queue for, which is proof. If we decide proof of possession is valuable and we define an ACME specific POP mechanism, then yeah, exactly what you just said. Are we forcing like hardware devices to implement the ACME proof of possession protocol? Like, yeah, I think here be dragons with taking CSRs out. They do in some cases provide value that is hard to replicate. And as was pointed out on list, the ACME client doesn't necessarily have access to the private key. Like, that's the more general case here, is the ACME client maybe on a slightly different subnet or whatever. Like, you can get the CSR to the ACME client, but you can't necessarily do a full round trip to private key. All those cases become tricky if you take CSR out. That said, I fully understand why we want to put it out to pasture.
Tim?
Yeah, I was just listening to Mike, and I decided I wanted to say we don't necessarily have to actually force hardware devices or everybody to do POP in order to have nice ACME POP. We could just say, this is how you do it if you want to do it. Forcing people to do it is policy and probably belongs somewhere else anyway. So just standardize the mechanism and then let somebody else force people to do it.
Yeah, that's exactly one of the things that I've been thinking about. And one of the reasons that I haven't actually started the draft yet is that I think there's a question of, like, if you include the pub key at new order time, is that a way of saying, yes, I can and will do a proof of possession for this? And then, if there's a pub key identifier in the new order, then you have to validate the challenge for that. Or, like, would there be something in the draft saying, pub key proof of possession challenges do not have to be validated in order for the order to be ready to finalize, as long as the CA is willing to accept there'd be a security considerations section saying this devolves to the old CSR case. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of considerations there. This is a little ways out, but I just wanted to sort of lob the idea across the plate for people to start percolating on.
Okay, and think we've had about 20 minutes of regular meeting with presentations and then 40 minutes of any other business, which is, some would say it's a good ratio, it means we're doing actual work rather than just presenting. So I think we're done here. So thank you all, and hope to see you in person in Dublin. Bye.
Ethan, quick question. When I leave, would it close? It hasn't closed yet, right? I know. It hasn't closed. It hasn't closed. So I'll just leave it. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, no, it's very confusing.
Ma, dai giù. Ma ci faccio.
You want to actually do the possession.